This person has written in saying, I'm looking at my options for moving house to be in the catchment area of a specific secondary school. I own my home, I'm mortgage free, and then I have another buy-to-let property with a large mortgage on it. I'm considering selling the buy-to-let and taking out a new buy-to-let mortgage on my present home to pay for the new home. As much as I'm aware, if I was to sell my home and buy a new one, or even rent a home for a year or two, and then buy a new home, I wouldn't be liable for the additional 3% SDLT. But I can't work out if I'd be liable for it if I were to sell my existing buy-to-let, but keep ownership of my home and turn it into a buy-to-let. Any advice? My mind feels quite fried. I'm trying to sort of keep up with all of that.
I think I've got that.
Yeah?
It's not specifically my area of expertise, but I do understand the rules around it, and we kind of do advise on it in a way. My understanding is that what they're asking to do, sell the home, keep the buy-to-let, buy a new home, is they would be liable for it on the new home.
Okay.
Because it's not specifically buy-to-let properties. Mm-hmm. It's second and so forth property purchases.
Got you.
So even if you don't own a property and you buy a buy-to-let, you're not liable for it on that first purchase.
Yeah.
But you are liable for it on any subsequent purchases.
Yeah.
So unless they sold both, they would be liable for it on that subsequent purchase.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So basically, in any case where you've got more than one gaff, you're going to pay. Yeah.
It's an easy mistake to make because it is referred to as affecting buy-to-lets, but in fact, it affects any purchase more than one property.
And it's interesting, isn't it, the sort of moving house and the catchment area situation. That's something that is just huge, specifically in the UK, or at least I know it is in London. And it actually changes the house prices, doesn't it?
Yep, and there's actually a little trick around, does it apply to them? Perhaps. If somebody is upgrading, so let's say they currently live in a £100,000 property.
Yeah.
And they're planning to buy a £500,000 property. Mm-hmm. But they want to keep the £100,000 one.
Right.
In that scenario, they would be liable for the extra 3% on the £500,000 property, which is a lot more than 3% on 100 grand. Mm-hmm. So one way around that would be to sell the initial home to a limited company, which is a separate entity. Okay. Now you would pay the 3% on the 100 grand because there's no first concession for a limited company, but you wouldn't pay it on the 500 grand property.
Oh, okay.
So they'd save themselves quite a lot of money there. They'd put the buy-to-let into a limited company structure, which for some people would be a good way of structuring it anyway, and they'd avoid paying tax on the higher value property.
Oh, there you go. So there are little tricks.
Maybe that would work for them if they were willing to sell their home, move their buy-to-let into the limited company, and then buy the new home.
Interesting. Something there you go. Yeah, that's definitely probably worth examining in full. Thank you. That's great.